Hello, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, we're so excited you decided to stop by. Hey, you can catch us every Wednesday evening, 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Time. We want to see you right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. Again, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades and Justice podcast, a chance where you can hear about justice and injustices here in our country. Again, Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hello and welcome to Shades in Justice podcast with your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill. Hey, we're super excited you stopped by on today. I have an amazing guest on today. We have the one and only Miss Latanya Goodlou, Mrs. Latanya Goodlou. And Miss Latanya, welcome to Shades in Justice. We're happy you're with us on today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I ran into you probably now a couple years ago, or was it earlier this year? No, it was maybe 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I met you through a very dear friend of mine, and I was amazed at your story. So I'm going to just yield the mic and let you tell us a little bit about your present position as a business owner here in beautiful Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Yes, and hello, Wyandotte County. Yay. Yes, and thank you again, Dr. Hill, for having me. It's a pleasure. And yeah, I think we connected about 2 years ago, and we've had so much movement together. Those lines have been blurred on the time, right? Like we can't.
Yes.
So I appreciate you, and I'm on your heels. And so, like Dr. Hill said, I'm Latanya Goodlou. I'm recently married to my husband. Yay! So name change. Some people know me as Latanya Skillerin, but I am now currently Latanya Goodlou. There's a lot of aspects to me, Dr. Goodlou, I would say. I hold
Thank you.
a few doctorates. A doctorate in Christian counseling. I also hold a doctorate in Christian business. And so those two things, and currently right now, CEO and owner of LRG Commercial Contracting, which is a residential and commercial, mainly commercial contracting company, and also executive director at Ladies That Lean, nonprofit organization, and the lean would stand for Living Excellently After Negativity. So, and I'm a grandma. So, yeah.
So you got the best of all worlds. That's what it sounds like to me. The grandma is the icing on the cake part, but wow. Well, I am so excited about just hearing about your business venture and how all that came about. We don't hear often in many circles about women who have a construction business and is doing well. And so do you mind sharing a little bit about that business and how it got started?
Sure, and thank you. Yes. Well, I'm a painter by trade for many years, and I have a deep background in building maintenance, building mechanics, operations of buildings, also construction of building from the ground up. I've worked in a lot of aspects in the field previous, managing building maintenance. My career really was at K-State for many years. And so I was there and head of the paint team there and just different things, and kind of grew from there, I had another business, Pretty and Painting Things, and it was more of a handyman residential service. But I wanted to scale, and I always seen myself in a commercial setting, and so really. Um, I met my husband up here in Kansas City, and he's a carpenter, and we have a lot of things alike. And so we kind of combined our trades, combined our skills. I lead the company, he runs the field. But we do, like I said, mainly commercial contracting, construction in house, if you would, trades in house, finish, carpentry, painting, final cleaning, the labor scope on commercial construction, new builds, and renovations. We do residential, but we do residential by word of mouth and discreetly. If I do have residential clients, it's because someone I know sent them to me, and I need to know who that person is. uh, it's been a long time of working in this field and learning a lot. And though I've enjoyed residential and making homeowners' dreams come true, it's just not my dream nor my husband's dream. So our big skill is we're headed for government contracting. That's where we really want to be, and we want the government to be our main and pretty much only client. But when I say government, city, state, and federal levels, but federal mainly. So.
Well, I understand that. And sometimes those federal government opportunities come with a lot of baggage slash requirements that small businesses really have a tough time acquiring those opportunities. So we are hopeful that you do very well with those federal grants and those federal opportunities for building. So I know, speaking to you earlier, that you have had a contract with the schools here in KCK.
Yes, absolutely. Last year, actually our first big contract, we did the Schlegel paint project over the summertime. So that was awesome. And it really was rewarding. My husband is alumni of Schlegel. And so that
Oh,
is really icing on the cake,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
and a walk down memory lane and things. It was amazing. And so that was last year. We just got off of finishing Turner Recreation Commission. If you guys are out, go visit that building. We
Yeah.
did a whole makeover for them, painted the entire building, everything. So it's
Oh my.
absolutely beautiful, and they love it. And I don't know, who's all listening from Wyandotte County, but Turner Recreation Commission, they just have so much going on for the community. So they were a great client, of course. But
Uh-huh.
honestly, I didn't know they had all that going on over there, you guys. They have a gym, they have aftercare for kids. If your kids need daycare, different things. They have Thanksgiving and all the holidays, they do something. So I really appreciate Turner, though, and the things that they're doing for the community. That's a big part of who we are as well. Though we are
Uh-huh.
headed for big government contracting, we want to see and be in place to help rebuild Wyandotte. And so Wyandotte is our first choice of looking for contracts.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial setting, we really have a strong desire to see the rebuild of Wyandotte and
Mm-hmm.
to be a major force, a major contractor in
Mm-hmm.
Wyandotte County. So keep us in your prayers.
Well, yes, ma'am, absolutely. So, I know a little bit about some things that happened in your life. And one of the
Yes.
things I wanted to ask you about is, when did you notice a drastic change in your life? Maybe there's some things you can share that you noticed a drastic change.
Ooh, well, I kind of break my life down in little sections because it's and so yeah, it's been sections of major change, right? I've been living on my own since I was 14 years old, and
Uh-huh.
back to me is the beginning of a major change, a major part of my life, where my life took off from there.
Uh-huh.
From there, life took me on a drastic road to incarceration.
Uh-huh.
And so that was a drastic change in
Mm-hmm.
my life. Coming home was a drastic change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Getting married, getting my doctorate. And so there's been levels of different
Mm-hmm.
drastic change, some good and some bad.
Uh-huh. Well, that's awesome, and I love your answer because in reality, that's how life is. It's just never a smooth sailing ship. It's always bumps and ridges and ups and downs. So I appreciate you just bringing that reality back to us. Um, as we think about shades and justice, I did a little research earlier on women in incarceration. And a lot of times women are incarcerated when they themselves are just fighting for their own lives. They have been abused by individuals and finally get out of that abuse because of them being able to fight back. And often that uh, fighting back may end up in that individual being injured somehow, or in some cases, dead. But if the young lady or the woman hadn't fought back, she would have been dead. But it looks like sometimes that the justice system doesn't take all that into its knowledge bank. And so uh, just sharing that one little piece about what I read about women who are incarcerated. How in the world did you survive coming out of being incarcerated? And what were some of the stories that the women that you encountered there in incarceration? What were some of their stories?
Yes. it's it's a lot to the story. More how I survived going in, survived the time, and then surviving coming home. I often look back to, and like, the footprints in the sand. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
God carried me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, God carried me. There's so many times that I feel like I was really low and at a low point during all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was looking at coming home, I was had so much anxiety about coming home. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I had built, I really, my view of incarceration now is kind of like they came, they kidnapped me from the family that I had. Yeah, I did the crime. I'm not one of those people who say I didn't do the crime, but I got kidnapped from my current family,
Uh-huh.
put over here with the new family,
Mm-hmm.
and you live with this new family, and then they come and snatch you from this new family and put you
Yeah.
back with your old family that they kidnapped you from, and then tell you you can't talk to your other family that you made new families with, though you can't have contact with them.
Wow. Yes.
And so,
Oh.
saying all that to say, it's a lot. You learning yourself again. You don't know people. You do know people. You snatched over here. Even your family. There's just a lot to being incarcerated. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think we have the time to break all of that down. But coming home was not as easy, as
Mm-hmm.
people would like to say. It wasn't as
Yeah.
joyous as people
Mm-hmm.
would like to say. I wasn't clapping, and standing on my head to come home because
Yes.
I was facing a lot of things, and um, I knew I wasn't going back to selling drugs, and so that really
Uh-huh.
stressed me out. This
Yeah.
would be the first time that I would be living a totally legal life, and I
Uh-huh.
did think that I would be able to support myself, and
Mm-hmm.
so on my children. That
Uh-huh.
I had major anxiety, so um,
Mm-hmm.
that was just a big part of coming home. When my thought process of sitting in there coming home, it was just so stressful.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't
Yeah.
oh my God, this is stressful to go home. And it's hard to
Yes.
say to people because people expect you to be clapping and happy. I'm going home. I'm going home. But it was really heavy and really sad. And
Mhm.
I cried. I cried when I left. When I left my new family. Um,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, I didn't cry because I didn't want to leave the prison walls, but
Uh-huh.
I cried. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going
Yeah.
to let my kids down again. And I'm leaving the people who kind of made me feel okay about where I was at in life right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Well, I want to commend you because you made it. You survived. You were brave enough. You were courageous enough to come home and start over. And I'm sure there were naysayers in your sphere, but you didn't let any of that stop you. And now you're the successful businesswoman with 2 or 3 doctorate degrees and yet beautiful. So
yes,
uh, I love that poem by Maya Angelou, and yet I rise.
yes,
That's what I see in you. You have risen from all of the stuff in your past, and so I
I
commend you now.
did take, and I did take those ladies, the passion of those ladies, and the heart for those ladies. This is how I'm here today. Is, it just. You did mention about the women and the things that they go through and being most women that are incarcerated for murder have murdered either their spouse or their children. And so
Wow.
that is an interesting fact,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So, in murdering their spouse, was this a case in self-defense many times or no?
Most of
In
the
your
time, yes. Most of the
Mhm.
time, yes. And just like every other thing, I'm sad with the law on the self defense thing. It is taken so very lightly. I
Uh-huh.
recently had a friend who, invited someone over to her house for dinner and they
Uh-huh.
were just having a good time. Another woman and another woman, and they were having a good time. The argument turned an argument, and the guest hit her in the head with a bottle. Well, she fought her back after that. And then she
Uh-huh.
called the police,
Uh-huh.
she told the police, and I was on the phone, happened to be, but she was telling the police everything that happened. She hit me in the head with the bottle, and then we started fighting. And because she started fighting, and because she invited her over for dinner, she had to go to jail too. Because they say domestic violence, domestic. And I'm like, what kind of crap is this? But it's the same label that they have on women and men in the domestic violence. That's a
Uh-huh.
same umbrella. And so
Uh-huh.
it's a blurred line. Most of the time when women are abused, they go report it, but well, they might have been high, they might have did, and it kind of the law takes away the severity of that and kind of turns there. When you most of these women they've reported these things to the law, to the people, to whoever, and it just gets this far. So, but there's quite a lot of women in prison for killing their spouse. So
Wow. I am just taken when I heard you say that. Uh, man, I wrote an article one time because the emblem for justice is a lady, and I ask the question, does Lady Justice really help women? I mean, that was my question I had just put out there because I knew of some of the circumstances. I knew from my own personal experience with domestic violence that, and this was many, many years ago, but at that time, uh, even though the proof was there and everything, they did not take the spouse into jail or anything. Matter of fact, they encouraged them to just go spend the night somewhere and come back tomorrow when things cool off. That was what was happening back in those days. So it was very, very discouraging uh, for me. So and my stuff, it, compared to maybe many others, was pretty lightweight. So I just know that there's some things out there, just like when you said both people had to go to jail, even though this was this woman's house. her guest started the whole thing. Why would this woman who fought back, why would she have to? So yeah, I would definitely challenge that and would want my attorney to really step in and help me to understand that one. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's so weird, especially in Kansas, because Kansas is very loose with their gun laws and how you
Uh-huh.
carry and stuff. But when it comes to actually defending yourself for real, it
Yeah,
doesn't add up. So
exactly.
I,
Exactly.
I know a lot of women that were in there for that. Now, most you have to read through the lines. Some
Yeah.
people didn't, some they didn't, but yeah, interesting.
Very, very interesting. And you mentioned a lot of the women were in there for killing their kids. That's heartbreaking. Um, in many of those cases, did the mom have a mental disability or just anxiety, or in your opinion, because we're not
Perspective,
claiming
right?
to be real professionals. Just in your opinion, what was going on with the mom in those cases?
Right. And one thing I found really interesting while we were locked up is that you don't talk to people about their crime there. It is
Oh,
not. It is not the topic. So you would never go to anyone and say, "Hey, what
okay,
are you here for?" or anything like that. You just hear everything through the grapevine. And
okay.
women incarcerated, they know you're coming before you get there and what you did. Though now I'll say that. Okay, we know
Okay,
women in there know what's happening on the street before people. I don't. It's a straight pipeline to information, but
interesting. Wow.
yeah, yeah. But I did one thing that it did bother me because it was treated very lightly. It was treated. A
Okay.
couple of my roommates had murdered their children, and because we didn't talk about it, and because it wasn't a conversation, it left me for speculation and judgment, on those
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to me because a lot of the women just carried on like nothing ever happened. Excuse me. To be perfectly
Okay.
honest, the ones
Uh-huh.
that killed their children. Hold on one
Hmm.
second. My heater failed. The ones that killed their children, if I would have been a reporter, I would have studied them more because how women carry on like nothing ever happened and don't, and that's not the center focal point of their conversation all the time used to really amaze me, right?
Yeah.
Because if something happened to my children and I would just
Right. Yeah.
but also on the flip side, it amazed me that the jail let this be a normal thing. Not that I'm not saying that they needed to be somewhere separate or anything like that, but I am saying, yeah, I didn't see any mental health treatment. I am saying
Okay.
that there was no setup like, okay, let's get you going through certain, you didn't kill.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
there's something underlining going on here, and even more so when they get to prison. I don't know if the mental part goes even deeper because when you start acting like something didn't happen that did, that's
Yeah.
mental as well.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so also, I don't know if you know or the listeners know that you get less time for killing a baby because they don't pay taxes. Tax-paying citizens, you get much longer sentences. So most of the women or people that kill their children, they are doing only up to like 10 years. And so they're coming home. Some of them have other children, which I found was interesting that the children got to visit. And, I even seen some of them got to go on retreats with their children, with the Girl Scouts and stuff. So I love the reform, and I love that space of growth, but it always did leave a question on mental health,
Yeah.
what's really happening here. And so, but there's no plan or no setup in there for that. So they're just coming right on home after that and releasing, I guess, dealing with life how they deal with it.
So this sounds like an opportunity where we could uh, come up with some reform where people are actually, I would like to say rehabilitated, but if they were never habilitated in the first place, it's not rehabilitation, just some uh, training, some counseling, some workshops where it is, I want to say mandatory, depending on the crime,
Yeah,
where they learn skills, alternative methods to, instead of murder, what's an alternative, you know?
right, right.
And so
Emotional
those are
awareness.
some, you know, how do you handle stress? What anxiety can do? And when you notice a trigger going off inside of you, what can you do? So these are some things we've, you know, been talking about over time, because one of the things that I had noted with the men's prison system is they get to do the library books, they get to, you know, take
Yeah.
courses and stuff like that. But I haven't heard that from women. What about you? Were you able to go to school or anything?
Yes. And yes, so I was able to go to school. I actually went to building maintenance school while
Okay,
I was
okay,
in there. And so I graduated with 600 hours of building maintenance. And that actually was, it made K State have to hire me in a maintenance position. I was a custodian, but when a maintenance position opened up, I applied for that, broke out my prison graduation certificate. It's valid
wow,
in the state of Kansas. Yeah. And so, but they had offered me business, some sort of typing class when I first got there. But for me, I wasn't thinking about owning a business or anything yet. I knew that I needed some skill to go right home and
uh-huh,
start working. And so I opted out of that computer class and into building maintenance. And so I
uh-huh,
went. Now there's electrical, plumbing. There's a lot of different courses that you can take. I will say I don't like that they're so masculine, although that's me, and I'm in that field. I think it's odd that that's what they offer women,
I
incarcerated.
see.
You
Yeah,
need a you need to break big rocks into little rocks, instead
uh-huh,
of more, different classes. I don't know whatever
mhm.
other classes and things that women, are into. Not that like I said, I'm into women in the trades and learning, but I
Yes,
just thought that that was weird that
uh-huh,
those are really the only courses that they offer: plumbing,
okay,
electrical, building maintenance. And let's say I do know why. Let me say, because the women are the free labor. So the women do the
oh,
so the women do the upkeep of the prison, as well as
okay,
to take mighty good care of Topeka. I worked in a lot of jobs outside the prison, cleaning the city of Topeka, cutting trees down, edging out all of the
wow.
hard labor work. I even worked on the Air Force Base there in Topeka. And so the women are really putting in hard labor for the prisons.
That's amazing. I had no idea. Now I'm going to switch up on you a little bit here,
Sure.
only because I did some research in particular with the Topeka prisons.
Okay.
And a couple of things I read about was the repeated offenses that the prison guards did to the inmates. There was a lot of rape by the prison guards
Yeah.
on the inmates. And then there seemed to be no stopping, no arrests were made, no. So maybe I read this wrong. I'm hoping you can give me a little insight that things might be better than what I read about a few years ago.
Well, I'm hoping as well. I don't. Um, from when I talk to people that are still there, I guess a lot of maybe a lot of that may have stopped because a few people, that were doing these things, kind of got finally dealt with.
Okay.
Um, but it's much worse because of drugs in there. I'm hearing, when I was in there, women weren't so much like trying to find meth and doing, these crazy drugs. And I always thought that when I was in there, like, if people get on crazy drugs while you're in here, it ain't gonna be a good. So it's a little different mindset of women right now. I'm
Okay.
listening and hearing, from in there. Um, Now, on the other side is the women are drastically underserved.
Uh-huh.
Uh, when COVID hit, everybody got stopped from going in there, and it's been a real slow on getting back in there, the groups and things like that. Ladies
Okay.
and is really trying to get in there so we can have, our inside in the scoop, but we're
Yes.
also wanting to take an emotional intelligence. You were just mentioning that
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
in there. Um, but a lot of those people, when that was going on while I was there,
Mhm.
a lot of those guards that were there when I was there that were doing that did get fired. They're not there. Um, but it's I don't know. I don't know how you ever been to jail. I don't. You probably haven't, Dr. Hill, but
I visited a couple folks.
it's
Yes,
hard to you never know these things are happening until the afterwards in these settings, right? Like when
I see.
I don't know how to even right now if it was going on, nobody's gonna know till afterwards or later.
Right,
Everything in these settings are made to keep the people that work there and all that in the clear, and you're the inmate and you're wrong, and so
right, right.
um, I don't want to just say, yeah, I know these type of things are still going on there, but if I had my guess, I would,
Uh-huh.
you know, where
Yeah.
where, where there's power in these type of
Yes.
places, people feel powerful,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
position. They really do.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
are. They control people's lives. And so,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's just another area where I am able to look at and think, we need a better system uh, because there's always a corner where there's no video, where there's no recording,
yeah.
be it in the showers or the mess hall, wherever it's at. And there's, you know,
Well, and I don't know if you do know, but the way that those dorms and things are set up, you have one officer for 100 women,
oh,
dorm.
okay,
So we're babysitting him, not so much he was babysitting us. Like
okay,
he's babysitting us, but you have 100 women on a dorm.
yes,
And
yeah,
so if he moved one finger, the whole dorm knows it, kind of thing.
yes,
So
yeah,
um yeah, so it's about manpower and
okay,
um having enough people to do this and do that, whatever. But the women in a DLC spectrum are always shortchanged, right? Because
okay,
if they like the men, they got classes, they got this, they seem to always have enough staff and always have enough everything to keep all their stuff going. But the
yeah,
women, not so much.
I
Um,
see.
it's really
Wow,
sad.
okay.
Yeah.
And did you see very many of the inmates who were pregnant and having babies on site, and then what happened to the babies?
Yes. Yeah, there was a few women who were pregnant. I've known women who got pregnant by the guards,
Yeah.
and the guards end up quitting and keeping, taking care of the baby. Just different settings. Some people, yeah, they have their babies in there. There is no ward there. There wasn't when I was there. So they were talking about it to be build a pregnancy ward downstairs on one of the dorms, but it had never come to fruition while I was there. And
Okay.
so pretty much you go, you have your baby in, your baby sent on to whomever. Hopefully you have plans or something like that. It's a real, you know, um, there isn't really a system. They don't have anything. They have been talking about it though. They have been talking about it, but also, like I said, as soon as the funding goes, any programs for women, they go. They go.
Wow.
Yeah, they go.
Okay. Okay.
So
Wow. Okay. Well, let me see. I wrote in my notes, I wanted to ask you a question. What was a climatic event that turned your world upside down?
huh. Yeah. Well, and I guess I guess I go back to the same thing that I said in the beginning of this is that it's been a few, it's
Yeah.
been a few different stages. Um, from 14, I always, to me, I guess if I had to say any time my world was flipped upside down was when I was 14 years old. And
Uh-huh.
I grew up in church and
Hmm.
Pentecostal church. And so
Oh.
dresses to the floor. We didn't listen to music. We didn't go nowhere with that. So, I mean, I didn't know nobody really either. But I followed from the pew, from the church pew to the streets real quick.
Wow.
And as a little girl that, I think about my kids and stuff at that age and just them out there in the streets and surviving and selling drugs and, yeah, I can't even imagine. It seems surreal. So
Yeah.
I think that takes the cake in my life.
Hmm.
Um, but then it continues with drastic events, some for good and some for bad, from
Uh-huh.
prison to home to purchasing my first home to, getting that maintenance job saying I did it, I got the certificate from prison, and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
moving to Kansas City, buying a house here, meeting my
Uh-huh.
husband, So it's
Uh-huh.
been every little bit dramatic events. Some of them
Well,
good, some
I
bad.
want you to know I applaud you for your success. And the other thing I must say, and in every one of these podcasts, I always want to say this. It is the Lord who has brought you through, me through the age of 14 to 15 to
Yeah.
25 to 35. I don't want to, you look like you're 35, so you might be a couple years older, but
Yeah.
but the thing is, if it had not been for the Lord on
Absolutely.
our side, oh my goodness, where would we be? Is there a scripture? Is there something that the Lord has put on your heart or gave you over the years that keep you going when everything is just looking horrible? How has God helped you? What is a scripture or uh, a text or a person? What happened? What was it that helped you keep going? I mean, we've said several times that there was so many climatic events, so many turns and twists and new things, reinventing yourself. But at each interval, there was God. So you want to share a little bit about that?
And absolutely, each interval there was God. Um, wow. Yeah. I, 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 I like to. I'm proud of the fact that my first run in with God was at 3 years old. My mom and everyone used to tell me the story about how I stood up there and I just wept and prayed and fell out and just in the spirit at 3 years old. You know,
Wow.
well, and I know that that story's been told to me over the years, like just randomly, about my
Uh-huh.
different people that went to my church then remember that story.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
through my life, I learned that it was just God reminding me. And my scripture is, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you,
Yes.
not to harm you. You know, um, I felt backslid a lot, through my life. And people made me feel that way. And it's up for debate. People can say that, but I never felt away from God. I never,
Yeah.
never, never felt away from God. Even when I was out selling drugs, when I was in the street, I always had a warm, I don't know how to say, I've always felt covered. I always knew I was covered. Like, and I've always known that. It's just, and
Uh-huh.
I thank God. I thank God because my story is not like everyone else's, but I've always had a security in, I've always known that. Like, I always known that I was covered, that I knew I was destined for something. I just didn't know what it was, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's just something that I just don't feel that was ever weak, is that knowing that God was with me, through everything. And so, but yeah, I know the plans that I have for you. When I was in my mother's womb, he knew that. And he knew the days, and the days would come, you know, and he showed itself true. My life story was already written. And so even in the bad times and in the things I've learned though, like, oh, glory is coming, right? Glory's on
Uh-huh.
the other side of this. That's what I've learned.
Right.
That's what I've learned.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
through everything, glory's on the other side. Trouble don't last always. It don't. And it's gonna be happy day the next day. So God has
Yeah.
kept me and showed up and showed out in my life.
Women need to know that, and men too.
Yeah.
Um, we all have different stories. We all been through something,
Yeah.
but just to know God has a plan. It
Absolutely.
may not look like you and I want it to look like, but just knowing He has a plan and that His thoughts about us are not for evil, but for good. It's like, but God, for real, we got all this over here going on. It don't look like it's for good. But oh my goodness, like you said, trouble don't last always. There are some good days coming. And
Yeah.
we as women out here in America, we have to continue to encourage each other to
Yes.
we can. I love the name of your organization, Lean. uh we have to learn how to lean on each other, and
Yes.
and that we have each other's back. We have each other's back. It has been such a pleasure just knowing you, Latanya, over the last couple of years. And when we initially met, I felt bad because you gave me some assignments to do and I couldn't get them all done. I tried, I called this one and that one trying to get it
You
done.
did
But
awesome.
we continue to talk and share. And wow, who would have known you have recently been with me in our campaign for commissioner and helped us, and you were right there. And so was Dr. Smith, another friend of yours, and you all were right there at the watch party. And I mean, who knew when I first met you all that you all would be such an integral part of my life right through here? You all were people I didn't even know 5 years ago. And yet you have been so accommodating and loving and helpful to me. And I'm just eternally grateful. And I appreciate what you shared today on this podcast. I think it should encourage anybody. You went literally from prison to the palace. I mean, literally. I mean, you look like a princess today, and you just, Queen Latanya. So it's a wonderful thing to see how the hand of God can make a difference.
Yeah.
If you just say, and I wish I could say, and you too, that we made all the right moves, we did all the right stuff, but that's definitely not the case for me.
Right.
And so, but God still had a plan for us, and He brought us through. He brought
Yeah.
us through. So,
And to
so
God
thank
be the glory.
yes, He gets the glory. So
Yes.
this has been a fantastic interview with you, Mrs. Latanya Goodlow, and
Thank
just thank you for sharing your time with us tonight. And again, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill at Shades Injustice podcast and radio show. Feel free to check us out at www.drevelynhill.net. Okay, until next time, hang in there and remember, God has a plan for your life. Hey, thanks for being at our show on tonight. This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades Injustice Podcast. Another great evening to be alive. Hey, this is Positive Power Christian Radio. Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades Injustice Podcast. Hey, see you next time. You can meet me every Wednesday at 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Standard Time right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. See you next time. Bye.